Hello there, this is Steve here in Sydney of the lay gnosis website truebluehealer.com, where in just 20 minutes, doing the beginner's tour, you can obtain activation of your divine spark, which has been known about for centuries and often thought to be just an urban myth or something like that, or an ancient religious theme, which is just religious rhetoric. And I assure you it is not. There is physical evidence, two types of physical evidence available to you to prove to you that divine spark activation is very real. And you can get a kind of immediate physical receipt in just 20 minutes at truebluehealer.com. It's completely free, by the way. Now, there's other presenters on the internet that do things. There's a wonderful presenter called Mr. GaryFranchi, who does very succinct news bulletins and he seems to produce a video every half hour without ever sleeping. And he has a refreshing honesty. He just says he's biased, he's in favour of Donald Trump, and he detests Marxism and what it's done to the Western world, and he proceeds to read the news through that lens. I only wish that level of honesty was available from mainstream media. It would have stopped the Western world getting into such a mess due to Marxism practicing ever more outrageous lies as time went on until Donald Trump came along, where the lying had an opposite effect, where it polarised people in favour of Donald Trump. So, why am I talking about GaryFranchi? Well, here he is. Here's a picture of him in case you haven't ever watched his channel, but he's always a good watch, good fella to subscribe to. And what he does to support his operation to help monetize it is give away tea bags, or supply tea bags at a modest cost, you see. You subscribe to his channel, buy some tea bags, and you can keep him going forever without sleep, making videos every half hour, which is a really wonderful benefit to society. However, can I remind you that I was sort of a news channel too, and layman's gnosis would have to be at least 10,000% better than any tea bag on earth. Okay, so, and you can get it for free. So is that a good deal or not? Or am I being naive, not monetising my channel? I've always stayed away from advertising and capitalism because I think we should be allowed some peace of mind somewhere on the planet. And I always thought my channel would be a place with no advertising. But everyone today is selling companion products and Patreon, everything, Patreon this and Patreon that. Do you think I have made a mistake? And I'd like to spread gnosis a lot further because it would solve a lot of problems for a lot of people. You start off by learning what you really are, and then you learn what everyone else is, and that changes your perspective dramatically and can make you very, very forgiving for many of the trespasses that people commit today. Okay, so you might tell me what you think about that. Would you mind advertising in this channel? Would you be offended by it? I mean, for example, a corny example of doing what GaryFranchi does. What if I said to you, if you go to truebluehealer.com, I'll send you a free packet of biscuits? Now, that's not going to work on you guys because only very smart people watch my videos. You'd immediately see that you're being treated like a domestic dog being trained. You know, I'll give you a biscuit if you do something, you know, if you behave properly. So that wouldn't work with you people, you smart people. So what can I do to get to people en masse so that we can improve their outlook and perception of the political and social scenes around them? I'll leave you with that questioning message. Now, there is some wonderful news coming out every day out of the Trump campaign, and one of them is that he's not going to use the White House apparently as an HQ. He's going to use Trump Towers nearby somewhere, and the heads of all the Marxist mainstream media went to his Trump Towers, and he got them all in a room apparently, and Mr. Trump gave them a very nasty dressing down and called them a pack of professional liars, perverting truth and all that sort of stuff. Blatant criminality he sort of accused them of, and the heads came out and reporting on the content of the meeting as they saw it. They said that they felt they were the subjects of a firing squad. That's how brutal he was with them. And he named some of the people in the group sitting in chairs in front of him in his marvellous dining room in Trump Towers, which is better than the White House. So a wonderful strategic victory there. And I'm hoping he's going to put some controls on the media. I think CNN should have their licence revoked for participating in distorting and presidential debates, for goodness sake, candidate debates, by supplying questions in advance on at least 2 occasions in the case of Wolf Blitzer and that other woman called Brazil. Wolf Blitzer was there he hasn't lost his job yet. He's still there. He turned up at this meeting where he was fire squatted. That's how 2 managers have described the meeting with Donald Trump. And Donald Trump has actually said he's not going to be feeding them. They don't have access to him as they expected. The mainstream media went there to Trump Towers to talk about how much access they deserved to the president. And he just said, well, you don't deserve any access to the president because you're not a truth network. You've got no interest in news. You've only got an interest in disinformation. And he talked about his personal hatred of some of the leading figures of the mainstream media. So that set them back on their heels. And I hope there's further restraints put on the mainstream media, as I've described in the previous video. But it's been very good to hear of that wonderful meeting where Trump turned the tables on them. Observations that the Trump effect is taking place even before Mr. Trump is sworn in January is happening around the world. Sydney newspapers today pointing out that some of our politicians are suddenly now speaking up on controversial issues with greater courage. The phrase used was they're growing a spine finally. That was a newspaper comment by a journalist. What happened was our immigration minister was on ABC radio, which is our equivalent of the BBC, and he was talking about immigration and the fact that we have a wholesale attitude that everybody can come from anywhere on the planet, because if we don't do that, we get called racist all the time. Malcolm Fraser, an old Prime Minister in 1975, heard about some terrible things happening in the civil war in Lebanon and airlifted out some 12,000 people claiming to be Christians. It was specifically done to try and help out a Christian enclave there, you see. What they actually found out was, even in the interviews, it was perceived that many of them were lying and not real Christians at all, and were in fact criminal drug dealers, assassins, and professional liars, genetic criminals by nature. And experts told the Prime Minister in the 70s that if you bring 12,000 of these people to Australia, you're importing a gene pool of criminality that will be forever perpetuated into Australian society. And this was ridiculed as racist and all that stuff at the time. And, we can't be racist. We have to let everybody in, no matter what level of rubbish they are. Well, the experts were completely right. Australia now produces more jihadis per capita than any other nation in the world, thanks to a few thousand people brought from Lebanon, northern Lebanon apparently, in the civil war time. And we're now paying the price for it. Of course, the Minister, Mr. Dutton, was talking about this quite openly, that we are suffering from basically pathological altruism and allowing ourselves to be stampeded by Marxists forever calling us racist. And we're now paying the price for that. And we have the children and grandchildren of these people airlifted out of Lebanon who weren't God-fearing Christians at all. They were criminal people, naturally criminal, genetically criminal people, who now produce a steady crop of jihadis every year in Australia. They fill our jails. They are drug dealers. Many of them have a high level of mental illness. Many of them go to ISIS and get killed there because they're on the run from drug gangs. That's been happening. There's a price on their head. They've got no choice but to go to the Middle East, and you may as well die there while screaming Allah Akbar to escape your assassin gang friends. So, the Minister, Mr. Dutton, has been encouraged by the success of Donald Trump, barbarian plain talk, plain speak, common sense, empirical common sense. And this is probably going to spread around the world. So Donald Trump is having some amazing effects on the world, and he's not even sworn in yet in January. So truly amazing to see that backbones are stiffening amongst Australian politicians when I had completely written them all off as all sort of victims of the insider team that just perpetually puts up losers as leaders. Maybe there's some useful components in our diseased political system in Australia. I don't know. Well, let's wait and see. I hope the backbone stiffening continues and common sense and empiricism comes to prevail over Marxist alternative universe thinking. A couple of months ago, I put a lot of deep thought into what is actually Marxism, that it seems to be a political theory that seems to perfectly fit the profile of a three-quarters developed physical brain, and it's basically you feel you have all the answers to everything and you don't need to learn the last two stages that convey maturity, that is empiricism and common sense. You can do without those and you can live in this alternate universe called Marxism. Even Podesta in one of his emails said that leftist people live in an alternative universe. That's a very potent statement, and they prefer a political, a completely political characterisation of everything rather than empiricism and common sense and facts and evidence. And the answer by some people, like Ken Daly, is to just keep hitting them with facts, evidence and data over and over again. But it's quite a hard slog. It's a never-ending process of trying to teach young people with only three-quarters developed brains that there's more to life than sloganising and hate speech. So I was very much gratified to find that Alex Jones and Lord Monckton have put out a video discussing this very social phenomenon of where do leftists come from and what is it that produces so much leftism in society. And I came to a similar conclusion some months ago, that because they invert all the values and run away from common sense, and they have some very deep, dark, cruel and vicious and undesirable character traits which are now being revealed on social media because they jot anything down, they have the courage to do it. Misplaced courage, I think, because it reveals their innermost self for all to view, and it's very, very ugly. And Lord Monckton talks about this in a video which I will link, and Alex Jones is desperate to help the conversation along and keeps interrupting the flow of Lord Monckton's explication of what is Marxism and where does it come from and how did it come to dominate the world. Lord Monckton comes down to the same conclusion I did months ago, that I'm glad he's saying it, that essentially Marxism attracts people because of its Satanism, its inverted values, its destructiveness, and you don't have to comply, you can attack everything around you. If you're not fully grown up and you're a spiteful child, you just want to smash everything because you don't want to be an adult, don't want to be a grown-up. You'd rather destroy everything around you, abrade and ablate everyone around you, that they're rubbish people, and you just hit them with about a dozen Marxist maxims, Marxist expletives, and you think that's a reasonable existence. Well, it's been terribly destructive to the social fabric of the Western world as well as its economic fabric. Lord Monckton calls this, for want of a better word, he's going to use a religious word, right? And he considered this with great care, and he said ultimately Marxism and the people it attracts are Satanist in their thinking. Let that sink in for a minute. Satanist in their thinking. That's what Lord Monckton says. He's come to the same conclusion I did many months ago. And highly relevant to this is what Winston Churchill said in the 1920 about the militant atheist Jews. Not average common Jews, militant atheist Jews who believed in nothing except the destruction of civilization that had taken over Russia in 1917. he noticed that about them. He had considerable insight and insider knowledge because he grew up in the Jewish community where such people, Zionists, were heavily disliked by the common Jewish community. Did you know that? So Winston Churchill's timeless description of Marxists, communists, is very, very fitting, fits perfectly, gels perfectly with what Lord Monckton is saying today on the Alex Jones show. And I'll link that video to this video here. It'll be beneath. And it's really something to think about. It greatly simplifies things. For us to put a label on this group of people who just want to destroy everything. Lord Monckton talks about their desire to destroy the coal industry, to destroy all industry, to destroy everything productive, useful and good, including families. Marx hated families, by the way. He said families had to be destroyed. And Lord Monckton points out that they've made war on women, on men and on children. And I'll point out that the Marxist desire, which is backed by pedophiles, which seems to control the whole political elite worldwide. You don't seem to get anywhere in politics without being a Zionist and being a blackmailable pedophile. Otherwise you seem to get nowhere. And that's why Trump has missed the whole thing, because he walked away from it a long time ago. He was taken to Epstein's Island and walked out, apparently. Wouldn't have a bar of it. And he's not a controlled entity like so many US politicians and British politicians. So it gives you an insight into the dark government, the so-called deep state. How do they actually control all these politicians to make them do their bidding? Well, all it takes is a reminder with a phone call, don't forget what you did last summer, that sort of thing. We've got the video, right? We can expose you, so you will introduce this measure to your parliament. And a dozen phone calls can get that through Parliament from anonymous sources. And the New World Order seems to be doing this. So chasing pedophilia, rooting it out wherever it goes, and which is going to start in the White House, isn't it, with Podesta and his Comet Ping Pong pizza parlour stuff and $64,000 worth of hot dogs, that's little boys. That's all got to be rooted out. As part of the war on the New World Order, their mainstream media has been destroyed by the internet, and now they're coming back to the internet and saying they're going to start flagging fake news sites, which is everyone they don't like. I'm not sure how they can do that, because Alex Jones could pop up with just another name, just another site name, another URL. How can you actually ban a person from access to the internet? In China they do it. China is now advising America in the Washington Post, I believe, or the Washington Times, I read it somewhere, that they're advising the internet to be censored, so that you have to keep a rating out of 10, rather like YouTube, where they say your status is in good standing, but if you create one breach, you get marks against you, 2 breaches, 3 breaches, and you lose your channel. So the Chinese have done that for all internet connections for all their people, and the Communist Party thinks that is the way to rule the world. So we're still up against Marxism, communism, emanating, headquartered in China, the last great bastion of communism, which can't possibly work. It only works because the Western world's middle class has been flattened, wiped out, and a new middle class has been created in Asia. John Bannon puts it very nicely that way. And so the new enemy is the old enemy, which is Marxism, communism, headquartered in China, soon to get a 50% tax on their exports to America, which is going to change the configuration of the international geopolitical scene. Observers are pointing out that Vladimir Putin has stepped out of the New World Order and had enough of it. He took all the privatised state assets of the Soviet Union. He took them back from Jewish gangsters who'd just taken over billion-dollar corporations. He's just got rid of all the Jewish gangster oligarchs. He just jailed them, got them on tax evasion, all sorts of things. Some of them were poisoned, I believe. Is it worth doing that to save the nation? I don't know. He's also embraced Christianity, has Vladimir Putin, and Donald Trump's been trying to build the Trump Towers in Moscow for years. The news is, by the way, for years. It's not just a recent phenomenon that he likes Vladimir Putin. He's always thought, apparently, that Moscow is one of the great world cities that should have a Trump Tower. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. So, and I'll just ask you if you've ever thought, where do my videos come from? Well, an internal mentoring voice tells me what we are going to do in the mornings, you see. We are going to talk about this and talk about that, you see. And so you thought I was a singular person, didn't you? Well, actually, I'm sort of a plural person. And please don't go attaching me to the list of 64 genders that you hear from the Greens. I don't mean it that way. But everyone is actually two intelligences rather than one. And second intelligence prompts me with an internal mentoring voice, and it provides much of the content, certainly sewing things together in my head before I ever sit in front of this camera. Interestingly enough, when I finish this video and I close the camera, I will not be able to remember what I have said. And I often review the video later before I upload it, and I think, golly, who said that? Was that me speaking? So you can enjoy the plurality of two. It's what you're all supposed to be. It's a wonderful experience. It really is a sleigh ride through a magic forest every day of your life. And it's something I can recommend to everybody, and it comes for free, which raises the question, should I really commercialise, monetise, patronise? What do you think, chaps? Is it worth it? Or should I just carry on flapping my gums indefinitely with almost nobody listening? What do you think? Hello to all you smart people out there who make the time and effort to come to these videos.